I never thought I would find myself standing in front of Moreau Tower on a cold Monday morning, clutching a worn leather bag against my chest like a shield. The building rose 47 stories into the gray autumn sky, all glass and steel and cold ambition. I was 27 years old, and I had spent the last decade of my life learning how to become invisible. Now I was about to walk into the headquarters of the most powerful alpha-run corporation in the city and pretend I belonged there. My name is Elias Vance. And I am an Omega with scars that tell a story I never wanted to live. The security guard at the front desk checked my temporary identification badge 3 times before letting me through the turnstile. I understood his hesitation. My left cheek and the side of my neck carry raised, pale lines that twist like dried riverbeds across my skin. No amount of makeup can hide them completely. I have tried. I have tried everything. High collars, strategic hair placement, keeping my head angled downward so the shadows fall across the damaged side of my face. After 10 years, I have become an expert at making people uncomfortable enough to look away quickly, but not uncomfortable enough to ask questions. That morning, I wore a charcoal gray button-down shirt with the collar fastened all the way up. My dark hair hung loose, covering the left side of my face like a curtain. I kept my eyes on the polished marble floor as I walked toward the elevator bank. Other employees streamed past me in expensive suits and confident strides. Alphas, mostly. Some betas. I did not see any other Omegas in the lobby. That should have been my first warning. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor took 47 seconds. I counted every single one of them, watching the numbers climb higher and higher on the digital display. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I was certain the man standing next to me could hear it. He was a beta in a navy suit, scrolling through emails on his phone, completely unaware that the Omega beside him was one bad interaction away from a complete emotional collapse. When the elevator doors opened onto the executive floor, I stepped out into a world of muted gray carpets, glass-walled offices, and the subtle scent of expensive coffee. A young woman with kind brown eyes and a nameplate that read, Margaret Chen, Human Resources Coordinator, was waiting for me. She smiled warmly, and I felt a small measure of tension leave my shoulders. Elias Vance, she asked, extending her hand. I'm Maggie. Welcome to Moreau Industries. We're so glad to have you. I shook her hand, careful to keep my left side turned slightly away. Thank you. I'm grateful for the opportunity. Maggie's eyes flickered briefly to my scarred cheek before returning to my face with deliberate kindness. She did not stare. She did not flinch. I appreciated that more than I could express. Let me walk you to your desk, she said, gesturing down the hallway. You'll be stationed right outside Mr. Moreau's office. He's in a meeting until 10, so you have about 40 minutes to get settled before he arrives. Mr. Moreau. Lucian Moreau. The CEO of Moreau Industries. The alpha I had read about in business journals and watched in press conference videos, always composed, always precise, always in complete control. He had fired 4 administrative assistants in the past 6 months. The Human Resources Department had called me 3 days after my interview to offer me the position, and I had accepted before they could change their minds. Desperation does that to a person. When you have been running for as long as I have, you learn to grab onto any lifeline thrown your way, even if it might pull you under. My desk was positioned in a small alcove directly outside a set of heavy wooden double doors. A brass nameplate beside the doors read, Lucian Moreau, Chief Executive Officer. The desk itself was clean and organized, with a new computer monitor, a sleek black phone with multiple lines, and a small potted plant that I suspected Maggie had placed there as a welcoming gesture. I set my leather bag down in the bottom drawer and began familiarizing myself with the phone system and the digital calendar on the computer screen. Work was safe. Work was something I could control. At exactly 10 o'clock, I heard the elevator ding at the end of the hallway. I did not look up immediately. Old habits die hard. But I felt him before I saw him. That is the thing about being an omega. You learn to sense alphas the way prey animals sense predators. It is not always fear. Sometimes it is something else entirely. Something that makes the air feel thicker and your skin feel warmer. Lucian Moreau walked past my desk without slowing down. He was taller than I had expected, with broad shoulders encased in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. His dark hair was cut short and neat. His jaw was sharp enough to cut glass. And his scent, I caught it as he passed, just for a moment, was like pine forests after rain, clean and grounding and utterly alpha. He stopped with his hand on the door to his office. Then he turned around and looked at me. I have spent 10 years dreading the moment when someone really looks at me. I have perfected the art of the quick glance, the polite smile that doesn't reach the eyes, the immediate redirection of attention to something else. But Lucian Moreau did not glance. He looked. His eyes, dark gray like storm clouds, traveled across my face with an expression I could not read. I braced myself for the familiar flicker of disgust, the subtle recoil, the carefully worded question about what happened to my face. None of it came. "You must be Elias Vance," he said. His voice was deeper than I expected, calm and measured. "Margaret spoke highly of your qualifications. I expect punctuality, discretion, and attention to detail. Do you have any questions before we begin?" I shook my head, still waiting for the other shoe to drop. "No, sir. I've reviewed the orientation materials. I believe I understand what's required." "Good." He pushed open the door to his office. "I'll need the Halstead contract file and a fresh pot of coffee. Black, no sugar. Hold all calls unless it's my brother." And then he was gone, the heavy doors swinging shut behind him, leaving me alone at my desk with my heart pounding and my mind racing. He had not mentioned my scars. He had not stared. He had treated me exactly the same way he would have treated any other assistant. I did not know what to do with that. I had prepared myself for rejection, for awkward questions, for the possibility of being fired before lunch. I had not prepared myself for indifference. I retrieved the Halstead contract file from the digital archives, printed it out, and brewed a fresh pot of coffee in the small kitchenette down the hall. When I knocked on his office door and entered, he was standing by the window, looking out at the city skyline with his hands clasped behind his back. He did not turn around. "Leave it on the desk," he said. I placed the file and the coffee on the polished mahogany surface. As I straightened up, I caught a glimpse of something on his desk that made my blood run cold. It was a photograph in a silver frame. The photograph showed a group of people at what looked like a formal dinner. And standing in the back row, with his cold blue eyes and cruel smile, was a man I recognized instantly. A man I had spent 10 years running from. Victor Halstead. My hand jerked back from the desk as if I had been burned. The coffee cup wobbled, and a few drops of dark liquid splashed onto the pristine surface. Lucian turned around at the sound. His eyes went from the spilled coffee to my face, and something shifted in his expression. His nostrils flared slightly. He was scenting my distress. "Is something wrong, Elias?" I could not speak. My throat had closed up completely. Victor Halstead. The name on the contract file. The man who had given me most of my scars. The alpha who had once owned the pack I was born into. He was connected to Lucian Moreau somehow. Business associates, perhaps. Friends, maybe. The thought made my stomach lurch violently. "I apologize for the spill," I managed to choke out, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'll clean it up immediately." I fled from his office before he could ask any more questions. In the small supply closet down the hall, I pressed my back against the wall and clamped my hand over my mouth to keep from making any sound. My entire body was shaking. 10 years. 10 years of running, of hiding, of building a new life from nothing. And now the past was staring at me from a photograph on my new boss's desk. I did not know if Lucian Moreau was Victor's friend or his business partner or something else entirely. I only knew that I had walked into the lion's den without realizing it. And the lion was watching me with storm-gray eyes that missed nothing. The first week passed in a blur of file organization, calendar management, and constant low-grade anxiety. I learned Lucian's routines quickly because I had no choice. He arrived at the office every morning at exactly 7:30. He took his coffee black and required it to be hot, not warm. He did not like being interrupted during his morning review of financial reports. His younger brother, Damien Moreau, called every Thursday afternoon at precisely 3 o'clock, and those calls were the only ones I was permitted to put through without question. Lucian himself remained a mystery to me. He was not cruel, but he was not warm either. He gave clear instructions and expected them to be followed. He did not engage in small talk. He did not ask about my personal life. He did not comment on my appearance or my scars or the way I positioned myself so that my left side was always angled away from him. He simply expected competence, and I delivered it. But I noticed things. I noticed the way his eyes followed me when he thought I was not looking. I noticed the subtle shift in his scent whenever I entered his office, a deepening of that pine forest smell that made my omega instinct sit up and pay attention against my will. I noticed that he never once mentioned Victor Halstead's name, even though the contract file remained on his desk for 3 days before being sent to the legal department. On Friday afternoon, I was organizing the supply cabinet when I overheard 2 senior managers talking in the break room. Their voices were low, but the door was slightly ajar, and my hearing has always been sharper than most people expect. Another Omega assistant, one of them said with a sneer in his voice. Moreau has lost his mind. That scarred one can barely look anyone in the eye. How is he supposed to handle the pressure of this office? Give it 2 weeks, the other one replied with a laugh. That's how long the last one lasted. Remember the Omega from accounting who transferred up here? Cried in the bathroom every day for a month before quitting. They're not built for this environment. Something hot and fierce rose up in my chest. It was not just anger, though there was plenty of that. It was also something else. Something that felt almost like protectiveness. They were not just insulting me. They were insulting Lucian's judgment, and that bothered me more than I wanted to admit. I stepped away from the supply cabinet and walked into the break room with my head held high and my shoulders squared. Both managers fell silent immediately. They stared at me, clearly realizing I had heard every word. I did not say anything. I simply poured myself a cup of water, met their eyes one at a time, and walked back out. Sometimes silence is the most powerful response you can give. The next morning, I arrived at work to find that both managers had been transferred to a branch office in a different state. The announcements went out via company-wide email at 9 o'clock sharp. No explanation was given. No warning had been provided. They were simply gone. I sat at my desk, staring at the email on my screen, trying to understand what had happened. The timing was impossible to ignore. They had been cruel to me on Friday. By Monday morning, they were no longer employed at headquarters. Lucian never mentioned the situation to me. He never asked what had happened in the break room. But when I brought him his afternoon coffee, he looked up from his paperwork and held my gaze for a long moment. "No one speaks that way about my staff," he said quietly. "Especially not about you." Then he returned to his work as if he had said nothing of consequence. But my heart was hammering so hard I could barely breathe. He knew. He had found out somehow. And he had acted without hesitation, without demanding an explanation, without requiring me to relive the humiliation of reporting the incident myself. That was the moment I began to fall in love with Lucian Moreau. I did not want to. I fought against it with every rational thought in my head. He was an alpha. He was powerful and wealthy and completely beyond my reach. He was probably connected to Victor Halstead in ways I did not fully understand. Falling for him was dangerous. Falling for him was foolish. But my heart does not listen to reason. And my omega instincts, so long suppressed and ignored, had begun to whisper a single word every time he looked at me. Safe. For the first time in 10 years, I felt safe. The incident that changed everything happened on a Thursday night in late October. A thunderstorm had rolled into the city with unexpected ferocity, knocking out power lines and flooding streets. Most of the office had gone home early, but I had stayed late to finish preparing materials for a board meeting the following morning. Lucian was still in his office, working through a stack of contracts that required his immediate attention. The emergency generators had kicked in, casting the 42nd floor in a dim, amber-tinted light that made everything feel slightly surreal. I was at my desk, organizing digital files, when I heard the elevator ding at the end of the hallway. That was strange. Security should have prevented anyone from coming up to the executive floor this late without authorization. I stood up, my heart already beginning to race. Old instincts, honed by years of hypervigilance, screamed at me to hide. The footsteps that echoed down the hallway were heavy and deliberate. I knew that walk. I had heard it in my nightmares for a decade. I knew it the way prey animals know the sound of a predator's approach. Victor Halstead stepped into the dim light of the executive floor, and my entire world contracted to a single point of pure terror. He looked exactly the same as he had 10 years ago. Tall, broad-shouldered, with hair the color of sand and eyes the color of ice. His suit was expensive. His smile was charming. He could have passed for a successful businessman, the kind of alpha you would trust with your investments and your handshake. But I knew what lurked beneath that polished surface. I knew the cruelty he was capable of. My scars were a permanent record of it. Well, Victor said, his voice smooth and taunting. Little Elias Vance. I heard a rumor that you were working in this building, but I didn't believe it. I thought surely you would have learned your lesson by now. Surely you would know better than to show your face in a city where I do business. I could not move. I could not speak. Every muscle in my body had locked up. My omega instincts were screaming at me to submit, to make myself small, to do whatever was necessary to avoid pain. It was the same response that had been beaten into me during my years in Victor's pack. The same response I had spent a decade trying to unlearn. I've been keeping an eye on you, Victor continued, walking closer. Did you really think you could just disappear? Did you think I would let you go that easily? You belong to the Halstead pack, Elias. You always have. And I've come to collect what's mine. He reached for me. His hand, large and brutal, closed around my wrist with a grip that I remembered too well. The pressure was exactly right to cause pain without leaving immediate bruises. He had always been skilled at that. Skilled at hurting in ways that did not show. But before he could tighten his grip, the door to Lucian's office swung open. Lucian Moreau stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the dim emergency lights behind him. His face was utterly expressionless. His posture was relaxed. But his scent, that clean pine forest scent I had grown accustomed to over the past few weeks, had transformed into something else entirely. It was thunder and lightning. It was the fury of a storm barely contained. Victor, Lucian said, and his voice was so calm it was terrifying. Release my assistant. Now. Victor's grip on my wrist tightened for a fraction of a second. Then, slowly, he let go. He turned to face Lucian with that same charming smile, as if he had not just been caught threatening an omega in a darkened office. Lucian. Good to see you. I was just catching up with an old friend. Elias and I go way back. He was part of my pack, you know. Practically family. He is not your family, Lucian said. He is my employee. Which means he is under my protection. And I do not take kindly to uninvited guests threatening my staff. Something flickered in Victor's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or calculation. You're protective of this one. Interesting. I didn't think you had a soft spot for damaged omegas, Lucian. Especially not ones with faces like his. The words hit me like a physical blow. I had heard variations of that insult my entire life. Broken. Ruined. Unlovable. But hearing it spoken so casually, in front of the alpha I was desperately trying not to love, made something inside me shatter. Lucian did not react to the insult. Not visibly. But the air in the hallway changed. It grew heavier. Denser. The alpha power radiating off him was so intense that even Victor, who was an alpha himself, took an involuntary step backward. You will leave this building now, Lucian said, and his voice carried the unmistakable weight of an alpha command. You will not contact Elias again. You will not approach him. You will not speak his name. If you violate any of these terms, I will destroy you. Not through business channels. Not through legal channels. I will destroy everything you have ever built, and I will enjoy doing it. Victor's face went pale. The charming smile vanished, replaced by something ugly and afraid. You can't threaten me like this. We have contracts. We have business relationships. My lawyers. Your lawyers will not save you, Lucian interrupted. Leave. Now. Victor left. He practically fled down the hallway, his confident stride replaced by something jerky and panicked. The elevator doors closed behind him, and the executive floor fell silent except for the distant rumble of thunder outside. I was still standing frozen by my desk, my wrist throbbing where Victor had grabbed me, my entire body trembling with the aftershocks of terror. Lucian turned to look at me. His expression softened. The terrifying alpha power that had filled the hallway began to recede, replaced by something gentler. Elias, he said quietly. Come into my office. Sit down before you fall down. I followed him because I did not know what else to do. My legs were barely supporting me. He guided me to a leather chair in front of his desk and then knelt in front of me, which was such a strange thing for an alpha of his status to do that I could not process it properly. He knelt in front of me and looked up at my face with those storm-gray eyes. I need to ask you something, he said. And I need you to tell me the truth. Is Victor Halstead the one who gave you those scars? The question hit me like a wave of ice water. No one had ever asked me that directly before. Most people pretended the scars did not exist. They looked past them, around them, through them. They did not ask where they came from, because asking would mean acknowledging them, and acknowledging them would mean confronting something ugly and uncomfortable. I opened my mouth to lie. The lie was automatic, reflexive, honed by years of practice. It was an accident. I fell. You should see the other guy. But the words would not come. Maybe it was the dim lighting, or the lingering terror, or the way Lucian was kneeling in front of me like I was someone worth protecting. Maybe it was all of those things combined. Yes, I whispered. He and the others in his pack. They said I needed to learn obedience. They said omegas who didn't obey deserved to be marked so everyone could see their shame. I expected Lucian to recoil. I expected disgust, or pity, or the kind of uncomfortable silence that usually followed any revelation about my past. Instead, Lucian reached up slowly, giving me time to pull away if I wanted to. When I did not move, he brushed the hair away from my scarred cheek with the gentlest touch I had ever felt. Don't hide, he murmured. Not from me. Tears filled my eyes. I could not stop them. 10 years of isolation and fear and desperate loneliness came pouring out of me in a flood that I had no power to contain. Lucian did not look away. He did not flinch. He simply stayed there, kneeling in front of me, his fingers warm against my damaged skin. No one touches you ever again, he said. Do you understand me, Elias? No one. I wanted to believe him. I wanted it so badly it felt like a physical ache in my chest. But I knew Victor Halstead. I knew he would not give up easily. The document he had mentioned, the PAC registration that had never been properly dissolved, was a real threat. He had legal grounds to claim me. And if he could not get to me directly, he would find another way to apply pressure. Before I could voice any of these fears, the emergency phone on Lucian's desk began to ring. The sound was jarring in the quiet office. Lucian glanced at the phone, then back at me. "Stay here," he said. "I'll handle whatever this is." He stood up and walked to his desk. I watched him pick up the receiver and listen to the one-sided conversation that followed. His responses were brief and clipped. "Yes." "When?" "Are you certain?" "Keep me updated." When he hung up, his expression had shifted again. The gentleness was gone, replaced by something sharp and calculating. "That was building security," he said. "Victor Halstead did not leave the building. He is still somewhere inside, and he is not alone. The security cameras on the lower floors have been disabled." The fear that had begun to recede came rushing back with renewed force. Victor was still here. He had brought reinforcements. And I had a terrible, gut-wrenching suspicion about what he intended to do next. Lucian moved to the door of his office and locked it. Then he turned to face me, and the look in his eyes was the look of an alpha preparing for battle. "Elias, I need you to listen carefully. There is a safe room behind the bookcase on the far wall. I am going to put you inside it. You will stay there until I come to get you. Do not open the door for anyone except me. Do you understand?" "I'm not leaving you out here alone," I said, and the word surprised me as much as they surprised him. "Victor is dangerous. He doesn't fight fair. If he has people with him—" "I know exactly how dangerous Victor Halstead is," Lucian interrupted. "I have known for years. The only reason I maintained a business relationship with him was to gather evidence of his illegal activities. The contract file on my desk is part of a larger investigation. But right now, none of that matters. What matters is keeping you safe." He walked back to me and took my hands in his. His grip was warm and steady and utterly reassuring. "I made you a promise, Elias. No one touches you ever again. I intend to keep that promise. But I cannot protect you if I am worried about you. Please. Let me put you somewhere safe." I wanted to argue. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to stay by his side, to face the danger together. But I also knew that I would be a liability in a physical confrontation. I was an Omega. I was not trained for combat. And Victor had spent years conditioning me to freeze in the face of aggression. "Okay," I whispered. "But you have to promise me something too. Promise me you will come back." Lucian's expression softened. He reached up and cupped my scarred cheek in his palm, his thumb brushing gently across one of the raised lines. "I promise," he said. "Now go." He led me to the bookcase, pressed a hidden mechanism, and a section of the wall swung inward to reveal a small, reinforced room with emergency supplies and a communication system. I stepped inside, my heart pounding, my eyes fixed on Lucian's face. Just before the door closed, he leaned in and pressed his lips to my forehead. The kiss was brief and gentle and devastating in its tenderness. Then the door sealed shut, and I was alone in the darkness, clutching the memory of that kiss like a lifeline. The last thing I heard before the soundproofing cut off all noise from outside was the heavy wooden doors of Lucian's office splintering inward, and Victor Halstead's voice raised in fury. The safe room was pitch black and utterly silent. I could not hear anything from the office outside, could not tell if Lucian was safe or hurt or worse. The not knowing was the worst part. I pressed my back against the cold metal wall and wrapped my arms around my knees, making myself as small as possible, the way I used to do in Victor's pack house when things got bad. Time stretched and warped in the darkness. Minutes felt like hours. I counted my heartbeats to keep myself grounded. 1, 2, 3. I got to 247 before I heard the mechanism on the door click. The bookcase swung outward, and light flooded into the safe room. I blinked against the sudden brightness, my eyes watering. When my vision cleared, I saw Lucian standing in the doorway. His tie was gone. His shirt was torn at the collar. There was a bruise forming on his jaw and a small cut above his left eyebrow. But he was standing. He was alive. "It's over," he said. "Security has them contained. The police are on their way." I launched myself out of the safe room and into his arms before I could think about what I was doing. It was not a conscious decision. It was pure instinct, pure relief, pure desperate need to feel his warmth and his heartbeat and the solid reality of his presence. Lucian caught me easily, wrapping his arms around me and pulling me close. He rested his chin on top of my head, and I felt him exhale slowly. "You're okay," I said into his chest, my voice muffled by his ruined shirt. "You're okay." I thought, I didn't know, I couldn't hear anything. "I told you I would come back," he said. "I keep my promises." We stood like that for a long moment, wrapped around each other in the wreckage of his office. The heavy wooden doors were indeed splintered, hanging crookedly from their hinges. Furniture was overturned. Papers were scattered everywhere. But none of that mattered. All that mattered was the steady thump of Lucian's heart beneath my ear and the solid warmth of his arms around me. When the police arrived, they took statements from both of us. Victor Halstead and 2 of his associates were arrested on charges of breaking and entering, assault, and attempted kidnapping. The detective in charge, a sharp-eyed beta woman named Detective Isabel Rojas, asked me questions about my history with Victor's pack. I answered as honestly as I could, though my voice shook on certain details. Lucian stayed by my side the entire time, a silent, steady presence at my shoulder. "The pack registration issue is a problem," Detective Rojas admitted, her expression sympathetic. "Halstead has a legal claim to you if the transfer was never properly filed. But given tonight's events, I think we can make a strong case for a protective order. It won't dissolve the pack bond permanently, but it will keep him away from you while we investigate." "It's not enough," Lucian said, and his voice was hard. "A protective order is a piece of paper. It won't stop him if he decides to ignore it." "It's a start," Detective Rojas replied. "And given what we found in his files, documents related to illegal pack activities, abuse records, financial crimes, he's going to be tied up in court for a long time. You have room to breathe." Room to breathe. That was more than I had had in 10 years. But it still was not freedom. Not truly. Not while the pack bond remained legally intact. After the police left and the security team began boarding up the damaged doors, Lucian insisted on driving me home. He would not take no for an answer. We rode the elevator down to the parking garage in silence, standing close enough that our shoulders almost touched. His car was a sleek black sedan with heated leather seats and a sound system that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. He held the passenger door open for me and waited until I was buckled in before walking around to the driver's side. "Where do you live?" he asked. I gave him the address of my apartment building, a modest complex on the outskirts of the city. He nodded and pulled out of the garage, navigating the rain-slicked streets with easy confidence. The storm had mostly passed, leaving behind wet pavement and the occasional distant flash of lightning. "You don't have to do this," I said quietly. "I can take care of myself. I've been doing it for a long time." "I know you can," Lucian replied without taking his eyes off the road. "But you don't have to. Not anymore." Those words settled into my chest and made a home there. Not anymore. For 10 years, I had believed that survival meant isolation. I had believed that letting anyone close would only lead to more pain. But Lucian had shattered that belief in the span of a single evening. He had fought for me. He had protected me. He had promised that no one would ever touch me again, and he had kept that promise even when keeping it meant facing down 3 hostile alphas in a darkened office. "Thank you," I said. The words felt inadequate. They felt like offering a paper umbrella in a hurricane. But they were all I had. "You don't need to thank me," Lucian said. "I did what anyone would have done." "No," I said. "You didn't. Most people look at me and see someone broken. They see the scars and they assume I deserve them somehow, or that I must have done something to provoke it, or that I'm too damaged to be worth helping. You didn't do that. You never did that. From the very first day, you looked at me like I was a person. Not a victim. Not a tragedy. A person." Lucian was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter than I had ever heard it. "I know what it's like to be seen as something you're not. My entire life, people have looked at me and see my family name, my money, my alpha status. They don't see me. They see a symbol. A stereotype. They don't see the person underneath." "Who is the person underneath?" I asked. The question hung in the air between us. Lucian's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I'm still figuring that out," he admitted. "But I think I'm closer to finding the answer than I was a few weeks ago. And I think you're part of the reason why." My heart stuttered in my chest. I wanted to ask him what he meant by that. I wanted to push further, to understand the depths of what he was offering. But we had arrived at my apartment building, and the moment slipped away before I could catch it. Lucian parked the car and walked me to the front door of my building. The rain had stopped completely, leaving the night air cool and clean. He stood on the bottom step, looking up at me with those storm-gray eyes, and I felt something shift in the space between us. Something that had been building for weeks, since the very first moment I walked into his office and he looked at me without flinching. "I'll have a legal team working on your PAC transfer by tomorrow morning," he said. "We'll dissolve the Halstead registration and get you registered as an independent Omega, if that's what you want. Or," he hesitated. "Or you could register under Moreau territory protection. It would give you additional legal safeguards. No pressure. The choice is entirely yours. Moreau territory protection." That was not just a legal arrangement. It was a statement. It meant publicly aligning myself with Lucian's PAC, accepting his protection in a formal, documented way. It meant trusting him not just with my safety, but with my future. "I'll think about it," I said. "Take all the time you need." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card with his personal number handwritten on the back. "If you need anything, anything at all, call me. Day or night. I mean it, Elias." I took the card. Our fingers brushed, and even that brief contact sent a spark of warmth up my arm. "Good night, Lucian." "Good night, Elias." He waited until I was safely inside the building before walking back to his car. I watched him through the glass door, watched the sleek black sedan pull away from the curb and disappear into the night. Then I climbed the stairs to my apartment, let myself inside, and collapsed onto my bed without even taking off my shoes. I did not sleep. I lay awake, staring at the water-stained ceiling, replaying every moment of the evening in my head. The terror of Victor's arrival. The relief of Lucian's intervention. The brief, gentle press of his lips against my forehead. The way he had looked at me when he said I was part of the reason he was finding himself. And beneath all of that, a deeper fear was growing. Victor Halstead was in custody, but he would not stay there forever. The PAC registration was still a legal tether binding me to him. And there was something else, something I had not told Lucian or the police or anyone else in the entire world. Something that Victor had threatened to use against me if I ever tried to leave him for good. My younger brother. Samuel. Samuel was 25 years old now, 5 years younger than me. He was the only family I had left. Our parents had died when we were young, and we had been taken in by the Halstead pack together. When I escaped 10 years ago, I had wanted to take Samuel with me. But he had been only 15 at the time, and Victor had made it very clear what would happen to my brother if I tried to take him away. So I had left alone. I had run, and I had spent every day since then wondering if Samuel hated me for abandoning him. I had not spoken to my brother in 10 years. I did not even know if he was still alive. The thought of Victor using Samuel against me was a nightmare I had been living with for a decade. And now that Victor was in police custody, now that his legal and financial crimes were being exposed, there was a chance, a slim, fragile chance, that Samuel might finally be free. But I would not know for certain until I found him. And I did not know where to start looking. The next morning, I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing on the nightstand. The caller ID read, Lucian Moreau. I answered immediately, my heart already racing. Elias, Lucian said, and there was something in his voice I had not heard before. Something urgent and hopeful all at once. I need you to come to my office as soon as possible. There's someone here who wants to see you. Who? I asked, but he had already hung up. I dressed in record time, pulling on the first clean clothes I could find and barely remembering to brush my hair. The scars on my face were visible. I had not bothered to hide them. After last night, after everything Lucian had said and done, the idea of hiding felt like a betrayal of the trust we were building. The taxi ride to Mora Tower took 20 minutes. I spent every one of them imagining who might be waiting for me. A lawyer. A detective. Someone from Victor's pack who wanted to make a deal. I never imagined the truth. When I stepped off the elevator onto the 42nd floor, I saw Lucian standing outside his office. The broken doors had been temporarily replaced with a heavy curtain while repairs were underway. Beside Lucian stood a young man with dark hair and gentle brown eyes and a face I would have recognized anywhere, even after 10 years. Samuel. My brother. He was taller than I remembered, broader in the shoulders, with the beginnings of laugh lines around his eyes. But his smile was exactly the same. It was the smile of the little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, the teenager who had begged me not to leave him behind, the brother I had spent a decade believing I would never see again. Eli, he said, and his voice cracked on my childhood nickname. Oh my God, Eli. Your face. What did they do to you? I could not speak. I could not move. I stood frozen in the middle of the hallway, tears streaming down my scarred cheeks, while my little brother crossed the distance between us and pulled me into the tightest hug I had ever received. I thought you were dead, Samuel sobbed into my shoulder. I thought Victor killed you. When you left, he told everyone you had died in an accident. He said it was your own fault for running. I didn't believe him. I never believed him. But I didn't know how to find you. I'm sorry, I choked out. I'm so sorry, Sammy. I wanted to take you with me. I wanted to come back for you. But Victor said he would hurt you if I tried. I thought staying away was the only way to keep you safe. Samuel pulled back, his hands gripping my shoulders. His face was wet with tears, but his expression was fierce. I got out 2 years ago. Filed my own pack transfer. It took forever, and Victor fought it every step of the way, but I got out. I've been looking for you ever since. I hired private investigators. I searched every Omega registry in the country. I never gave up. I knew you were alive. I knew it. I'm here, I said. I'm here now. I'm not going anywhere. We held each other in the middle of the hallway, two broken brothers finally made whole. Lucian stood at a respectful distance, giving us space. When I finally looked up and met his eyes, I saw something in his expression that made my heart clench. It was not satisfaction or pride, though both were present. It was something softer. Something that looked almost like love. How did you find him? I asked. Lucian stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back. After last night, I had my legal team pull every file related to the Halstead pack. We found Samuel's transfer request buried under layers of bureaucratic obstruction. Victor had been blocking it illegally. Once we flagged the obstruction, the transfer was processed within hours. Samuel was already registered as an independent Omega. He just didn't know we were looking for him until we reached out this morning. You did this, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. You brought my brother back to me. I told you, Lucian said quietly. I keep my promises. Samuel looked between us, his tear-streaked face breaking into a watery grin. Eli? Is there something you want to tell me about your boss? Because the way he's looking at you right now is not very professional. I felt heat rise to my cheeks. Samuel, don't. No, it's fine, Samuel said, holding up his hands. I'm not judging. I'm just saying, if the incredibly powerful Alpha CEO who saved my life and reunited me with my long-lost brother also happens to be completely head over heels for said brother, I am 100% in favor of that development. Lucian cleared his throat. His ears had turned slightly pink. I should get back to work. The legal team has paperwork for both of you to sign. Elias, you'll need to decide about your own pack registration. Take the day off. Spend time with your brother. We can discuss everything else later. He retreated into his office, pulling the curtain closed behind him. Samuel watched him go, then turned back to me with raised eyebrows. Eli. That man is absolutely gone for you. Tell me you've noticed. I thought about the way Lucian had knelt in front of me. The way he had brushed the hair from my scarred cheek. The gentle press of his lips against my forehead. The way he had fought for me without hesitation, without conditions, without expecting anything in return. I've noticed, I admitted. And I think I'm gone for him too. Samuel threw his arm around my shoulders and steered me toward the elevator. Then we have a lot to talk about, big brother. Starting with the last 10 years and ending with you telling me exactly how you plan to let that man know how you feel. We spent the rest of the day together, and it was one of the best days of my life. Samuel told me about his escape from the Halstead pack, the friends who had helped him, the long legal battle to gain his independence. I told him about my years of running, the jobs I had worked, the apartments I had lived in, the fear that had followed me everywhere. We cried. We laughed. We ate terrible fast food in my cramped apartment and stayed up until 3 in the morning talking about everything and nothing. And through it all, one thought kept circling back to the front of my mind. Lucian Moreau had given me this. He had given me safety. He had given me protection. He had given me my brother back. He had asked for nothing in return except my trust. I wanted to give him more than trust. I wanted to give him everything. But I was scared. I was scared that I was too broken for someone like him. Scared that the scars on my face and the deeper scars on my soul would eventually drive him away. Scared that loving me would be too much work, too much pain, too much baggage for any alpha to carry. Samuel must have seen the fear in my eyes, because he reached across the table and took my hand. Eli, he said, that man looked at you like you hung the moon. He fought off 3 alphas for you. He tracked down your long-lost brother just because he knew it would make you happy. I don't think a few scars are going to scare him off. But what if they do? I whispered. What if he eventually realizes I'm not worth the trouble? Then he's an idiot, and I'll help you key his fancy car. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think you found someone who sees you. Really sees you. And that's rare. That's precious. Don't throw it away because you're afraid. I looked at my brother, this young man who had survived the same nightmare I had and come out the other side with his hope intact. If Samuel could be brave, then so could I. I'm going to accept his offer, I said. The Moreau territory protection. I'm going to trust him. Samuel grinned. That's my big brother. The next morning, I arrived at Moreau Tower before sunrise. The construction crew had already replaced the broken doors to Lucian's office. I stood outside them for a long moment, gathering my courage. Then I knocked. "Come in," Lucian's voice called. I pushed open the door and stepped inside. Lucian was at his desk, already dressed in an immaculate suit, reviewing documents. He looked up when I entered, and his expression softened immediately. It was a small change, barely noticeable, but I had learned to read him over the past few weeks. The slight relaxation of his shoulders. The warmth that crept into his storm-gray eyes. The way his scent shifted, welcoming and safe. "Elias," he said. "I wasn't expecting you so early. Is everything all right?" I crossed the room and stood in front of his desk. My hands were trembling, but my voice was steady. "I've made my decision. About the PAC registration." Lucian set down his pen and gave me his full attention. "All right. What have you decided?" "I want to register under Moreau territory protection. If the offer still stands." The smile that spread across Lucian's face was the first truly unguarded expression I had ever seen from him. It transformed his entire demeanor, softening the sharp edges and revealing the warmth underneath. "The offer stands. It will always stand." "Elias, There's something else," I interrupted. "Something I need to tell you before I sign anything." Lucian's smile faded slightly, replaced by concern. "What is it?" I took a deep breath. This was the hardest part. Harder than admitting Victor had given me my scars. Harder than facing down the memory of 10 years of abuse. This was opening myself up completely, making myself vulnerable in a way I had never allowed myself to be. "I have feelings for you," I said. "Romantic feelings. I know this is unprofessional. I know you're my boss and my alpha protector, and there are probably a dozen rules against what I'm doing right now. But after everything that's happened, I can't keep pretending I don't feel this way. You've done so much for me, and I don't expect anything in return. I needed you to know. Before I accepted your protection. Because if you don't feel the same way, I understand. I'll still take the protection if you're offering it. But I need to know where we stand." The silence that followed was excruciating. Lucian stared at me, his expression unreadable. My heart hammered against my ribs. I had just laid my soul bare in front of the most powerful alpha I had ever met, and I had no idea how he would respond. Then Lucian stood up. He walked around his desk, closing the distance between us until we were standing face to face. He reached up and cupped my scarred cheek in his palm, the same gesture he had made the night of the attack. His thumb traced one of the raised lines on my skin with infinite gentleness. "Elias Vance," he said, and his voice was rough with emotion. "I have been falling in love with you since the moment you walked into this office and refused to let my cold demeanor intimidate you. I have been falling in love with your strength, your resilience, your quiet determination to survive in a world that has been cruel to you. I have been falling in love with the way you make me want to be a better man. So yes. I feel the same way. I feel it so strongly it terrifies me." Tears spilled down my cheeks. I could not stop them. "You're not terrified by my scars?" "Your scars," Lucian said, "are not something to be terrified by. They are something to be honored. They are proof that you survived something that should have destroyed you. They are a map of your strength. And I will spend every day of my life proving to you that you are worthy of love. Because you are, Elias. You are worthy of everything." He leaned in and pressed his lips to my scarred cheek. The kiss was soft and reverent, like a prayer. He kissed the raised line along my jaw. He kissed the twisted mark at my temple. He kissed each scar individually, deliberately, as if he were memorizing them. And I stood there, crying, letting him love the parts of me that I had spent 10 years hating. The weeks that followed were the most surreal of my entire life. Victor Halstead remained in police custody, denied bail due to the severity of his crimes and the flight risk he posed. His pack was being systematically dismantled by a joint task force of law enforcement and Omega rights organizations. The evidence Lucian's legal team had gathered over years of investigation proved invaluable in building cases against Victor and his associates. For the first time in a decade, I began to believe that justice was actually possible. Samuel moved into a small apartment in the city, close enough that we could see each other whenever we wanted. He found a job at a bookstore, something he had always dreamed of doing, and began rebuilding his life with the same quiet determination that had carried him through his escape from the Halstead pack. We had dinner together every Sunday night, and I watched him blossom from a traumatized survivor into a confident young man with a bright future ahead of him. And Lucian became the center of my world in a way I had never allowed anyone to be before. We did not rush into anything. That was important to both of us. I was still healing from years of trauma, and he was still learning how to let someone past his carefully constructed walls. We started slowly, with lunches in his office and walks through the city park after work. He held my hand in public, openly and without shame, and the first time he did it, I nearly broke down crying in the middle of the sidewalk. "You're not hiding me," I said, my voice thick with disbelief. "You're not ashamed to be seen with me." Lucian stopped walking and turned to face me. His expression was serious, almost fierce. "I will never be ashamed of you, Elias. I am proud to be seen with you. I am proud that you chose to trust me. If anyone has a problem with us being together, that is their issue to deal with. Not ours." I believed him. For the first time in my life, I actually believed that someone was not ashamed of me. Our relationship deepened in quiet, everyday moments. Lucian learned how I took my tea and started having it ready for me when I arrived at work. I learned that he had trouble sleeping and started leaving small notes on his desk for him to find in the morning. He introduced me to his younger brother, Damien, who turned out to be a cheerful, energetic beta with none of Lucian's intimidating reserve. Damien took one look at us together and declared that I was the best thing that had ever happened to his brother. "Seriously," Damien said, grinning at me over dinner. "Before you came along, Lucian was basically a robot in a suit. Now he actually smiles. It's terrifying. I keep waiting for him to start singing or something." Lucian threw a napkin at his brother's head. "I do not sing." "You hummed this morning," I pointed out. "I heard you." Damien nearly choked on his drink. He hummed? Lucian Moreau hummed? I need to mark this on the calendar. This is a historic occasion. Lucian looked at me with an expression of utter betrayal. "You're supposed to be on my side." "I am on your side," I said, smiling. "I'm just also on the side of accurate reporting." Damien cackled with laughter, and even Lucian cracked a smile. It was a good night. It was the kind of night I had never imagined I would get to have. Family. Laughter. Love. All the things Victor Halstead had tried to convince me I did not deserve. 3 months after Victor's arrest, the trial began. I was called to testify, which was one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. Standing in a courtroom, facing the man who had tormented me for years, I felt all my old fears rushing back. My voice shook. My hands trembled. I had to pause several times to collect myself. But every time I looked at the gallery, Lucian was there. Sitting in the front row, his eyes steady and unwavering. Samuel was beside him, holding Damien's hand for support. My family. My pack. The people who believed in me even when I struggled to believe in myself. I told my story. I described the abuse, the scars, the years of running and hiding. I described the night Victor broke into Moreau Tower and tried to drag me back to his pack. My voice grew stronger as I spoke. The truth had been locked inside me for so long that releasing it felt like setting down a weight I had been carrying for my entire adult life. Victor was found guilty on multiple counts, including assault, kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, and pack abuse. He was sentenced to prison. It would not give me back the years I had lost. It would not erase the scars on my face or the deeper scars on my soul. But it was justice. Real, tangible justice. And that was more than I had ever dared to hope for. The day the verdict was announced, Lucian took me to the rooftop garden of Moreau Tower. The city sprawled beneath us, glittering with lights. The autumn air was cool and crisp. Lucian stood beside me at the railing, our shoulders touching. "How do you feel?" he asked. I considered the question carefully. "Free," I said finally. "I think I feel free." "Good." Lucian turned to face me. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. My heart stopped. "Elias Vance," he said, and his voice was steady but his eyes were bright with emotion. "I know we haven't been together very long. I know you're still healing. I know there are no guarantees about the future. But I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to wake up every morning and see your face. I want to hold your hand through every challenge and celebrate every joy. I want to build a home with you. A real home. A safe one." He opened the box. Inside was a simple silver band, elegant and understated. "This is not an engagement ring," he said quickly. "It's a promise ring. A promise that I will always protect you. Always respect you. Always love you. When you're ready, if you're ever ready, we can talk about more. But for now, I just want you to know that I am yours. Completely. Forever." I stared at the ring. Tears were streaming down my face. My scarred, ruined face that Lucian had kissed and honored and loved. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes. Yes to all of it. Yes." Lucian slid the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. He had probably spent weeks making sure of it. Then he cupped my face in his hands and kissed me, soft and sweet and full of promises. We stood on that rooftop for a long time, wrapped around each other, watching the city lights twinkle below. I thought about everything I had been through. The pain. The fear. The loneliness. The 10 long years of believing I was unlovable. And I thought about everything I had found. My brother. My freedom. My alpha. My future. The scars were still there. They would always be there. But they no longer defined me. What defined me now was the man who held me, the family who loved me, and the life I was finally ready to live. 1 year later, on a crisp autumn evening much like the one when Lucian had given me the promise ring, we returned to the rooftop garden. This time, Samuel and Damien were there. This time, there were flowers and candles and a small group of people who had become our chosen family over the past year. This time, Lucian knelt on one knee and offered me an engagement ring with an emerald that matched the color of my eyes. "Elias Vance," he said, and his voice was thick with emotion. "You have given me the greatest gift I have ever received. You have let me love you. You have let me see the person you truly are, beneath all the pain and fear and scars. And that person is the most beautiful soul I have ever known. Will you marry me?" I said yes before he even finished the question. I would have said yes 1,000 times. I would have said yes on the very first day I met him, if I had been brave enough. We were married 3 months later in a small ceremony at the Moreau family estate. Samuel was my best man. Damien was Lucian's. The guest list was small, but every person there had played a role in our journey. Detective Rojas, who had become a friend over the course of the trial. Maggie Chen from Human Resources, who had been the first person at Moreau Industries to treat me with kindness. The security team who had helped Lucian take down Victor on that terrible night. I wore a charcoal gray suit with a high collar that covered most of my scars. But halfway through the reception, I made a decision. I excused myself and went to the restroom. When I came back, my collar was open. My hair was pushed back. My scars were fully visible. Lucian looked at me as I approached, and his eyes filled with tears. He understood what I was doing. I was not hiding anymore. Not from him. Not from the world. Not from myself. I love you, he said, pulling me into his arms. I love every part of you. Every scar. Every fear you overcame. Every tear you shed. I love it all. I love you too, I said. Thank you for teaching me how to love myself. We danced under the stars, surrounded by our family and friends. And when Lucian leaned in to kiss me, he did not kiss my lips. He kissed the scar on my cheek. The one Victor had given me with a broken bottle. The one I had spent 10 years trying to hide. He kissed it, and I smiled. Because my scars were not marks of shame. They were proof of my survival. And I had survived for a reason. I had survived to find my brother. To find justice. To find love. To find myself. I had survived to live. The next morning, I woke up in Lucian's arms. The sun was streaming through the windows of our new home, a house we had chosen together on the outskirts of the city. It was not a mansion, despite Lucian's wealth. It was a modest house with a garden and a library and a kitchen where we could cook together on lazy Sunday mornings. It was a home. A real home. Our home. Good morning, husband, Lucian murmured, his voice still rough with sleep. Good morning, I replied. Did you sleep well? Better than I have in years. He pressed a kiss to my forehead. What do you want to do today? I thought about it. There were no pressing obligations. No trials to attend. No legal battles to fight. No past to run from. There was only the present, and the future stretching out before us like an open road. I want to call Samuel and invite him over for dinner, I said. And I want to plant flowers in the garden. And I want to read the book that's been sitting on my nightstand for a month. And I want to do all of it with you. Lucian smiled. It was the same unguarded smile I had seen that morning in his office, when I told him I wanted to register under his protection. It was a smile I now had the privilege of seeing every single day. That sounds perfect, he said. Let's do all of it. And we did. Thank you so much for listening to the story of Elias and Lucian. If you enjoyed this tale of healing, love, and finding strength in the places we once felt most broken, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories just like this one. Your support means the world and helps us continue creating the content you love. I would also love to hear from you in the comments. What was your favorite moment in Elias and Lucian's journey? Was it the first time Lucian stood up to Victor? The reunion between Elias and his brother Samuel? The rooftop proposal? Let me know, I read every single comment. If you have a story idea you would love to hear brought to life, drop it in the comments as well. I am always looking for new tales to tell. Until next time, remember, your scars are not your shame. They are proof of your survival. And you are worthy of love, exactly as you are. See you in the next story.